Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to our next video lesson. In this particular program that you're going to be working on, you're going to design a form that will allow the user to enter their first name, such as in this example here. They're going to enter their birth month in the form of an integer, and then when the user clicks the submit button, we're going to get a message. So in this case, notice we'll say hello and then whatever the person's first name is, and then indicate that they were born in, and what you'll have to do is you'll have to convert the number that they entered into the actual birth month. So in this case, 4 is April. If they entered 1, that'd be January. If they'd entered 2, that'd be February, so forth and so on. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the if statement to help us understand and to develop a program that will do this. Okay, so I mentioned already you're going to create a program that allows the user to enter their name and their birth month in the form of a whole number. After the user clicks the submit button, the label must display a message stating their name and their birth month. So entering 4 displays April, entering 5 displays May, so forth and so on. All right, here's some of the software requirements. The program must convert the entered numeric value to a text representing the month. The program must generate a message using the name and the month as seen in Figure 2. You have to use the following names for the controls on the form. And also we're going to have you declare this particular variable in the BTN submit click procedure. All right, so let's first work on the graphical user interface. I already have Visual Studio already open, so I'm going to create a new program, a new project I should say, and Visual Basic, Windows Form application, and what I'll do is I'll type, this is a VB Lab, and let me see, which one is this? This is 12. Okay, so VB Lab 12 project. Press enter. Give it a couple seconds. All right, and here we go. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to open up the toolbox, and let me tack this down. We're going to need a button. We're also going to need a label, and we're also going to need a text box. So let me drag each one of those to the form, and also a text box. Okay, we don't need this toolbox any longer. Let me take a look at the handout, and the first thing we'll need is the title for the Windows should say message. So let me select the form, open up properties, tack this auto hide pin down, and this is going to say message. Press enter. All right, there's the title right there. And enter your first name colon is the label. So let me move the label to the upper left-hand corner. Change the text property to enter your first name colon. All right, there's the label. Next, we have to place a text box. So I'm going to place a text box next to that label, and I'm going to maybe make this thing just a little bit longer. Let me look at the handout. It looks like it's approximately over here, almost to the X here, so I should make this thing just a little bit longer, something like that. Okay, well, now that I've created this label and also this text box, let me select those two, copy and paste by hitting Control-C, Control-V as in Victor, and move those over here. This next label should say, what is your birth month? Okay, so I have a feeling that these are going to be too long, so let me reduce this a little bit here. What is your birth month? Is your birth month, colon. All right, and now I can go ahead and reduce the size of the text box, or increase the size of this text box, and then reduce the size of this one so that it is somewhat consistent with my handout. That looks good. We have a submit button underneath both of those, so let me place the submit button over here and increase the size of that. Maybe increase the size of the height as well. And submit is supposed to be the wording or the text. So submit. And then I have this label here on the bottom. So let me just take one of these labels, Control-C, Control-V as in Victor, to copy and paste. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the auto size from true to false so that I can resize this label and also reposition it. So let's put it somewhere over here like this, say for example. Let's take a look at the handout, and it looks like it has a 3D appearance, and the text will be middle centered in terms of its alignment. So let's change the border style to fixed 3D. I'm going to drag this thing all the way down so that I can change the text alignment to this guy right here, middle centered. So the text appears centered. And now I can remove the text because it's supposed to be blank at first. And I'll also change the size of the form so it looks like this. Alright, so now let's go ahead and assign the various names to the different controls. So for example, this text box over here, let me drag this thing all the way to the top and take a look at the name property that I'm supposed to create. And it's supposed to say txt name. Okay, so the name property for this text box will be txt name. Then we also have this text box over here. It looks like that's supposed to be called txt birth month. So txt birth month. Then we have this button, btn submit. btn submit will be that name. And then of course we have the label down here, and it looks like LBL result is going to be the name of the label, LBL result. Alright, so in terms of the graphical user interface, it looks like we're all done. Now I need to go to the programming part, and so I'll just double click on the submit button, and that should take me to the code area. Specifically, it's going to take me to the btn submit click event procedure. Alright, so I don't need the properties window. There we go. Alright, so notice the cursor is blinking inside of this procedure. It is the procedure that will start when I click this button, right? Well, the first thing that we're going to do is put some comments down, right? We're going to have some declarations for sure. Declarations. And we're going to have to get the user input. We're going to do some calculation. And then finally we're going to output our results. This is a typical programming endeavor, right, is to create something like this: declarations, user input, calculation, output. Now, not all programs are like this, but in general, this is probably a very common template for creating most of your programs. Well, in the declarations area, notice from the handout that I'm saying that you must create a month num variable. And since we indicated that the user must enter a whole number, as you can see here on the handout, so what I'll do is I'll say dim month num as integer, because we know that an integer is a whole number, so we'll definitely use that. Let's get the user input. I don't think I need any more declaration. I don't need to declare any additional variables. That may not be the case. I may have to change that. So let's see what happens, right? So let's go to get user input, and certainly we're going to have to put something into this month num variable. Oops. There we go. And what we're going to do is we're going to convert to an integer, so int 32, and specifically whatever is inside of that text box, birth month dot text. Okay, let me review what's happening here. I'm taking the text from this text box. This text box, as you'll recall, is this one right here. What is your birth month is the question, and then the user will enter in their birth month here. Well, I'm going to take that text from that text box. I'm going to convert this into a whole number, and then I'm going to assign that to this variable called month num. Well, once I have that variable, I can go ahead and use the if statement to determine what month I will display. Right? So for example, let's actually do this. Let me create another variable, and let's say this is going to be month name as string. Now, you know that an integer is a whole number, so month num can hold any whole number. Well, month name in this case is going to be a string, and a string is just simply words, right? So let me give you some example of words, right? So it could be January, right? That's a word. It could be several words. For example, Robert is an instructor. Okay, so this would be a string of text. Text could also be something like this, right? I could have numbers, words, symbols, right? So all of these would be examples of a string of data. String, in other words, is just text, special characters, numbers. It's just simply text. So what I'm thinking is I want to create a variable called month name. And month name will either be equal to January, February, March, blah, 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 all the way up to December. So it could be any one of the 12 months, but the name of those months. So here's what I'm thinking. What if we did something like this? What if I said, if the month num, right, so if the month num is equal to 1, then let the month name equal to January. Else, if, put it like this, else if the month num is equal to 2, then the month name will be equal to February. Okay, let me stop right here. I'm introducing the else-if statement. Now you're familiar with if from the previous lectures. You may not be familiar with else-if. Now you're definitely familiar with else, right? Before I said that if the if statement is false, then you would do the else portion. What else-if allows you to do is to have another alternative. So think of it this way. You have radio buttons on your car stereo, probably 5 radio buttons. When you push one, the other 4 are deactivated. If you push the first one, the last 4 are deactivated. If you push the last one, the first 4 are deactivated. You can only have one button activated at any time. What this is doing is it's saying this radio button is the first one. This is the second radio button. In fact, let me create a third radio button. So I say else if month num is equal to 3, then month name is equal to March. Right, I have to create all the way up to December. But here's what's going to happen. If this is true, then let month name equal to January. Else, if this is true, then let month name equal to February. Else, if this is true, then let month name equal to March, and so forth and so on. So in other words, we're trying to find out which is the true answer. Well, hey, my birthday's in March, right? So let me type this. Else if month num, equals 4, then month name is equal to April. All right, my birthday's in April. So if I were to have this, if I were to run this program, I would type Robert here, and I would type the number 4 here, and then I would click submit. Well, the first thing that would happen is it would say, is the month num 1? Well, no, it isn't. It's 4, right? So this is false. So from here, we would jump to here. And then the question is, well, is the month num equal to 2? Again, it's false. My birthday's in April, so I typed in 4. So the next question then is month num equal to 3? So do you see how when this was false, we didn't execute this? We are trying to find out which one of these if or else if statements are true. Once we get to the one that is true, which in this case, else if month num is equal to 4, well, that's me, right? I typed in the number 4. This is a true statement. Now we get to execute the statement underneath the else if statement. So at this point, month name would now be equal to April, and it would skip over the rest of the items. Well, let me go ahead and finish everything else. In fact, I'm going to make this a little bit quicker on myself here. Let me copy and paste this several times and just change it. So copy this, Control C, and then paste. That'll be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then finally 12. And what I'll do is I need to change these numbers, so this would be 5, and then therefore this would be May. This would be 6, May, June. This would be 7, well, that's July. And let's see, what else do I have? Okay, this will be 8, and that is August. 9 will be September. 10 is October. 11 is November. And 12, December. I'm going to get rid of this extra space here. Let's take a look at this and follow it step by step. Believe it or not, this is one huge if statement. It's a complex if statement. But only one of these can be true, not all of them. Very much like your car stereo. You can only push one button at a time. You can't have 3 radio stations playing simultaneously in your car. So, again, let's consider the user entering 4. If month num is equal to 1, that's false. Else if month num is equal to 2, that's false. Else if month num is equal to 3, that's false. Else if month num is equal to 4, finally that's true, because my birthday is 4. I typed in the number 4. All right, so month name now becomes April. Well, what happens at this point? Do we continue asking, else if month num is equal to 5, 6, 7? Do we keep on doing that? No. This is true, so therefore we do this, and watch what happens. We jump from here all the way down to end if. So everything else gets ignored. Let's do this one more time. What if, okay, my wife's birthday, her birthday is in June. So let's see what happens with number 6. She types in the number 6. Is this a true statement? No. Is this a true statement? No. So we go to here. Is this true? Nope. Is this true? Nope. Nope. Is this true? Yep. The month number is 6. Therefore, the month name now is going to be equal to June. From here, we skip over everything because we've already found our true value. We jump and we end if. And then, in this case, it would be the end of the program. So what this if statement and what all these else if statements do is they try to find which one is true. Now, is it possible that the user could enter the number 13 here? Sure. There's nothing that stops me or stops the user from entering a fictitious number. There is no 13th month, but what if they enter 13? Well, let's see what would happen in that case. If month num were equal to 13, would this be a true statement? No, it's false. Month num equal to 2? No, it's false because we said 13. Is 13 equal to 2? No. Is 13 equal to 3? No. Is the month num or 13 equal to 4? No. False, false, false. It would go all the way down here. Okay, is 13 or the month num is 13 equal to 12? Nope, it's not. So what would end up happening is we would just simply go to end if, and that's it. Month name would have no name because here we've said that month num 1 is January, 2 is February, 3 is March, so forth and so on. I've made these if statements to assign a given number with a given name. If your number was 12, it would be December. But if your number is 13, there is no 13th month, so therefore month name would not even have a value. Nothing would be printed. Okay, for the month name, that is. Nothing would be assigned to the month name. So I hope now that you understand how to use the else-if statement. Basically, you can think of this. You have options. Every time you see an else-if, you're asking, is this possibly true? Well, how about this? Is this possibly true? You have all these possibilities. Once you have found the answer, then you ignore the rest. What if a person was born in January? Well, that would mean that the person or the user would enter the number 1 here. And what is your birth month? If they entered the number 1 and then click the submit button, we would then ask the question, if the month num is equal to 1, well, that's true, right? They entered 1. Is 1 equal to 1? That's a true statement. So therefore, the month name is equal to January. At this point, guess what happens? We ignore all these else-if statements because we have now found our true statement. We ignore all these other statements. We go to the end-if statement, and that's it. Now, by the way, I could do something like this. I'm not going to. But I could do something like this. I could say else, and then I could say month name equals invalid. Okay, so check this out. Remember that scenario that I told you before that the user enters the number 13. What would happen? Well, let's see what would happen given my new code entry. So let's say that the month num is 13. Okay, the user entered 13. This is a false statement. Well, so we check this one. That's false. This is false, and I hope that you can see why it's false, right? 13 is not equal to 3. 13 is not equal to 4. That's what the user entered. They entered 13. What were they thinking? Is 13 equal to 5? Nope. Is 13 equal to 6? No. We keep on going through this. Is 13 equal to 12? No. Now we get to the else statement. Now notice this does not say else if. This is the default clause, which basically means this. If everything above is false, then at the very least, do this. Which in this case, I'm saying, hey, else for any other number. So I don't care if it's 13, 14, -1, 100, whatever. If it's not one of the numbers above here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, if it's not one of those numbers, then the month name will be invalid. So the else clause is commonly referred to as like the default statement, right? If all of the above is false, then at the very least, month name will be equal to this, invalid. Do I have to have an else statement? No, I do not. So I could have this, which basically says, hey, I'm looking for those months that have a number, right? If they don't have the appropriate number, then nothing happens. So question, do I have to have an else statement in my if block of code? No, I don't. I don't have to have an if statement, as you can see here. But if I did have an else statement, it is important to know how it works. The else statement is always the very last thing that occurs before the end if. So the else statement basically says default. If all else above fails, then in this case I can assign something like what I just did before, which is to say that this thing is invalid. Okay, so I tell you what, why don't I leave this else statement here just to see what happens when the user enters an inappropriate number. And then finally, once we're finished with that, well then the label result.text is going to be assigned something. Well, what is it going to be assigned? Let me take a look at the handout. It says hello and then whatever the person's first name is. Okay, so hello and then space, and I'm going to concatenate that with whatever the person's first name is. Well, their first name is located in that text box called txt name. Right? This text box right here, that's where they type their name in. What is the name of that text box? It's called txt name. So let's get the name or the text from this text box, and that's exactly what I've done. Hello, notice how I put a space here, and then I'm going to concatenate that with whatever the person's name is. Let me go back to the handout, and it looks like there's a comma, you were born in. Okay, so let me add that. So let me concatenate that with comma, you were born in space, close quote. Okay, so I have the first several words of my string of text. Hello, Robert, that's what I'm going to type in that text box, comma, you were born in space, and then I need to add the actual name of the month that they were born in. So let me do this. Let me concatenate that with the month name. Right? This is going to be January, February, March, April, May, June. It's going to be one of the months based on the number that they typed. Okay? So just a reminder, this is called the concatenation operator. Concatenate means put this and this together. Okay? So this string of text with the space right here, and the text that's inside here, which will be the person's first name, whatever they type, right? These two will be put together. And I'm also going to concatenate that with this, so all of these are going to be put together. And I'm also concatenating that with the month name. So in other words, I hope you get the idea that anytime a new chunk of string needs to be added to your output, you use the concatenation operator. This is called the concatenation operator. By the way, if I did this, would this be valid? Absolutely. Here's the tricky thing about this. The plus symbol typically is associated with addition. 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. That's how you would read this. But see, this operator is being overloaded in this context. In this context, this means take this and concatenate it with this. Now, this is not necessarily called the concatenation operator, but in this context, it understands that these aren't numbers. That's not a number. What is meant here is to connect this with this. So it basically acts like the concatenation operator, which you also know is the ampersand, this guy right here, right? So either one, if you use the ampersand operator or if you use plus, that's okay. I'll just stick with the ampersand operator just so that I'll be consistent with what I initially typed down. But I want you to know that you could put plus there and it would be okay to do that as well, the plus symbol. All right, I think I finished with my program. Let's run it. Let's see what happens. All right, here we go. So let me go ahead and type in my first name, Robert. Let me type in my birth month, which is the number 4. Okay, I'm going to click Submit. Hello, Robert. You were born in April. That works. Let me see. Let me type in Kristen, and she was born in June, so I put 6. Click Submit. Hello, Kristen. You were born in June. Oh, so far so good. Let's see here. How about my friend Greg? He was born in January, so I'm going to type in the number 1 here. Type Submit. Hello, Greg. You were born in January. That's good. How about Joshua? Joshua was born in May. So the number 5. Click Submit. Hello, Joshua. You were born in May. So it looks like our months work. By the way, remember that one scenario that I said, what if the user entered a weird number like 13? There is no 13th month. Well, let's see what would happen here. Submit. Hello, Joshua. You were born in invalid. That's kind of a weird thing to say. Well, in other words, 13 is not a valid number. And recall that over here in the program, I said, hey, if the month is not equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, then at the very least, the month name will be invalid. You've entered an illegitimate number, so you can't do this. All right, and that's why the word invalid appears here. All right, so it looks like our program works. Let's now go through some debugging so I can show you step by step what's actually happening in the code. So what I want to do is I want to run the code and I want to stop it right here. So I'm going to create a break right here to stop the code. Let's go ahead and start the debugging process. So I'll click that green arrow. I'll type Robert, and let me just type in 12 just for argument's sake so I can see, so I can show you what happens in our if statement. So I click Submit. All right, so at this point, we're going to go back to the code. Notice now that we are stopping execution at this statement here. We're now in Visual Studio. Notice we're in the debugging mode, right? The program is still running, as you can see here. We're just debugging it. All right, we're taking the text from this text box. Notice that the number 12 appears here. That means that this is a string. Do you see the quote and the quote over here? This is a string, even though we've typed in a number. Well, hey, we can't do math with a number. I can't check to see if it's equal to 4 or if it's equal to 5 or whatever, because it's a string. So I have to convert that to a number. So I convert that to an integer, and I told you before that int32 is what you're going to use to represent integer. So now that it's an integer, I put it into the variable month num. Well, currently at this point, I haven't executed the statement. I am about to execute this statement. Currently, month num is equal to 0. So watch what happens when I click this button, step over. So when I step over, now the text has been converted to a number, and now notice that month num is equal to 12. In fact, you'll see it down here in the autos panel. Here it is, month num is equal to 12. Well, the next statement to be executed is this one over here. All right, so if month num is equal to 12, well, month num is equal to 12. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't say that right. Let me try that again. If month num is equal to 1, month num is currently equal to 12. That's what the user typed in. Is 12 equal to 1? False. So watch what happens when I click the step over button. We go from here to here. Did you see how we didn't even execute this statement right here? Because that statement is only supposed to be executed if this statement is true. Since it is false, we go to the next else if statement to investigate to see if this one is true. Month num is still equal to 12. Is 12 equal to 2? That's a false statement, so notice what happens when I step over. We go to the next else if statement. Once again, month num is equal to 12. Is 12 equal to 3? Nope. So when I step over, notice that we go to the next else if statement. Month num is equal to 12. Is it equal to 4? Nope. Is this true? No. Is this true? No. And so we keep on going through this until we find the correct answer possibly. So here, month num is equal to 12. Is this true? Is 12 equal to 12? It sure is. So watch what happens when I click step over. Finally, we do the statement immediately underneath the else if statement. Well, in this case, then the string month name, which is currently equal to nothing, is about to be assigned the text or the string December. So December is about to be assigned to the month name. Watch what happens when I click step over. So I click step over. Now notice this month name is equal to December. Perfect. December was placed into month name. We are now at the end if statement. And so then, and by the way, did you notice how we skipped over the else statement? And then I can go over here to step over. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take all this data, the hello, the person's first name, which in this case is Robert. We're going to take the month name, which in this case is December. We're going to connect them or concatenate them all together. And we're about to place them in the result label. So let me go ahead and continue. And this will take us back to the form. Sure enough, here it is. All right, let me change this number 1, or the number 12 rather, to the number 1. And click submit. Watch this. Okay, so I submit. Once again, we're going to take the person's first name, or the birth month, I should say, and that's the string 1. See the quotation marks there? So now after I step over, this gets placed into month num, so now it's the number 1, right? No quotation marks there. This is the number 1. Watch this. If 1 is equal to 1, right? Because the month number is 1. That's what the user typed. Is 1 equal to 1? True statement. So watch what happens. From when I click step over, now month name is equal to January after I click step over. So I step over, and sure enough, let me go back over to the top. Okay, month name is now equal to January. There it is. Did you notice that as soon as we executed the statement, it ignored else if, else if, else if. It ignored all of these, and look at where it stopped. It stopped right here at the end if statement. So in other words, once we have found the true else if component, everything else gets to be ignored, right? Because only one of these is the possible true answer. So we go to end if, and then in fact we're going to go over here to this LBO result.text is going to be assigned something. If I click continue, you'll see that it's January. Okay, one last example. Let me type in the number 100. Okay, obviously there is no month 100, but I'm trying to make a point here. So let me click submit. Okay, we're back over here at the code. Let's take that text, which is 100, and convert that into a number. So that's what this statement does. So month num is now equal to 100. Is 100, which is the current month number, is that equal to 1? False. Is it equal to 2? False. How about 3? False. False. So forth and so on. All of these are going to be false because the month num is 100. It's not going to be equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And in fact, watch what's going to happen here. Okay. Is 100 equal to 12? False. So when I click step over, we go to the else portion. The else is like the catch-all. Notice this doesn't say else if. This just says, hey, else. If everything else above is false, then at the very least, do this. So watch now. We're going to then execute. We're about to execute. The month name is going to be assigned the string invalid because everything above was false. So now when I click this, month name is now equal to invalid, and then I can go ahead and continue from this point. I don't have to step through the code to see what happens. Hello, Robert, you were born in invalid. Okay, so I don't like that. I don't like calling someone an invalid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this. I don't need that else statement. I'll just simply leave it blank, right? And assume that the user really is going to type in a valid number. Now, I could modify my program to make it so that the user will only enter the number 1 through 12, and all other values are not valid, so it'll just simply ask the user to enter a valid number. We could do that at a later time. The only thing that I want you to understand from this video lesson is how the if, else if, and else statement, I already erased it, how they work within the if block of code. Okay, so let me remove this. I don't want to stop the code again. Run the program once more. Let's enter in probably the happiest month of all, the number 12 for Christmas. Hello, Robert, you were born in December. Okay, looks like it works. All right, so this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this has been helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.